Perfect. Well, hello, everyone. Thank you so much for attending tonight's meeting. To ensure accessibility to all CSC members, residents, and other members of the CSC, we're going to go ahead and provide instructions on choosing the correct language on Zoom. So for tonight, if you're a monolingual English speaker, please select the world-like interpretation icon at the bottom of the screen, then select English. If you're using Zoom via a telephone or a tablet, you're going to select the three dots to see more options, followed by interpretation and then English. At this time, I'm going to go ahead and pass the mic on to Lingüística to review the instructions in Spanish.
Buenas tardes a todos, bienvenidos. Les voy a dar las instrucciones nuevamente de cómo poder accesar a la interpretación en español. Si ingresaron con un teléfono móvil o una tableta, van a tocar su pantalla. En la parte de abajo van a encontrar 3 puntitos donde diga más o more. Van a seleccionar donde dice interpretación de idioma. Después seleccionen el canal de español y por último el botón Done, listo o finalizar. También pueden seleccionar silenciar el audio original para que escuchen solo una voz a la vez. Y si ingresaron utilizando con una computadora, van a ver el icono de un mundo en la parte de abajo de su pantalla. Seleccionen el mundo y seleccionen el canal de español. También pueden seleccionar la opción que diga silenciar el audio original para que solo escuchen al intérprete y no 2 voces a la vez. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. So now that we are all in the correct channel, we're going to go ahead and continue.
Okay, can you hold on for 1 second? Is the translation working, everyone? Perfect, thank you.
All right, thank you. Well, hi again and good evening to everyone. I want to welcome you all to our June Chapter Community Steering Committee meeting. As always, it's really great to see you all virtually, especially after meeting so many of you at our last meeting, which was in person in May. As you all know, my name is Vanessa Gomez, and I'll be facilitating today's meeting with my colleague, Dr. Amy Ramos. And I am also joined by Jessica Olsen from the Air District, as well as my colleague, Jem Marasigan, who will be taking notes tonight and be providing technical support as needed. So there are a couple of ground rules, as you all may be aware, which were on this page. I'll go ahead and review them. So before we get started, we ask that you please mute yourself and make sure that your full name and organization are showing as your screen name. To change your screen name, you can click on the top right side of your picture or video. For CSC members, you're going to go ahead and use the convention CSC- first name, comma, last name. And if you're a resident, you're going to use the naming convention R dash first name, comma, last name. And for all other participants, you're going to use first name, comma, last name dash affiliation. If you are a part of the Air District or the California Air Resources Board staff, you're going to be using AD or CARB respectively. And for the general public, you're welcome to use the capital P as your affiliation. And for all other organizations, you can go ahead and write your organization name. And we do want you to note that meeting hosts may update your screen name during the meeting if needed. And as you all know, Jem, Amy, and I are available to help with technical support and to keep track of action items throughout the meeting. So please don't hesitate to reach out to our team with any questions via the chat. We do not have a co-host tonight, and we continue to encourage anyone who would like to volunteer as co-host for a CSC meeting to let us know so we can support you and make that happen. And as a reminder to all, co-hosts decide the level of participation and facilitation that they will have during the meeting. H&Co and the Air District will work closely with you to ensure that the co-host feels prepared during the meeting. And if you have any recommendations on how to best encourage CSC members, please do send them our way. We're happy to take them into consideration so we can get some folks to co-host. We'd love to have you. And Before I continue, I want to thank you all again for taking time out of your busy schedules to be here today. As always, we value your ongoing commitment and your engagement in this process. And it's because of you that your community will be able to develop and implement new strategies to monitor air quality and reduce health impacts. To ensure community input and participation during today's virtual meeting, we ask that you adhere to the following commitments for engagement that you all agreed on and see on this slide. Does anyone have any questions about any of these agreements before we move on to the next slide? Okay, I'm not seeing any raised hands or comments in the chat, so I will go ahead and continue. On this page, you can see the agenda topics for items that we have for today. As a reminder, the agenda topics for today's meeting are representative of the topics that are requested by CSC members. That is, these are topics that are requested during the last CSC meeting in May, as well as during the most recent agenda setting meeting. Today's agenda topics are designed to provide updates on action items from the previous CSC meeting, provide space to reflect on feedback shared during last month's in-person meeting, and provide an overview of oil and gas responsibilities and enforcement, as well as to share a methane task force update. Standing updates will be sent via email for all agencies and other partners for tonight's meeting. At this time, I would like to pass it on to Jessica Olson for welcoming remarks.
Thank you, Vanessa. Good evening, everyone. My name is Jessica Olson. I am the Director of Community Strategies and Resources with the Air District. And I am so grateful, as always, for all of you who spend your evenings with us, really working to help improve the air quality in your community. I also want to thank the agency partners that are a big part of today's meeting, and just remind folks how we got here. As Vanessa mentioned, we do set the agenda with you all during the agenda setting meetings, but we also take input during CSC meetings and in between when we get calls from residents. And so today is really a culmination of all three of those things. And several folks were aware of a very similar presentation that you will see today given to your neighbors over in the Arvin Lamont community. And so we're just so grateful for you all who were interested in making sure that the Shafter community heard the same message. And I really look forward to today's discussion. We also are going to reflect a little bit on our in-person meeting and definitely look forward to engagement there. But other than that, I just want to thank you all, like Vanessa, encourage you to be a co-host with us at our next meeting and look forward to today's discussion. Thank you, Vanessa.
Thank you, Jessica, for those remarks. And before we continue on to the next agenda item, I'd like to take a moment to remind you all that in addition to contributing to the monthly CSC agenda items, you're always more than welcome to spend more time on items or table items if you wish to at any time. This is ultimately your meeting, so we want to make sure that you know that you have a say in how each meeting progresses and how much time you spend on each agenda item. And now at this time, I'd like to pass the mic over to my colleague, Dr. Ramos, for a review of our action items tracker.
Thank you, Vanessa. So thank you all for your input in today's agenda and for being here over the last few months. We know that some of you were out last time, so just want to remind you that this next agenda is to allow you all to catch up with the progress that's been made on the action items that you all have recommended. So we, as your facilitation team, take notes as you all are talking and turn them into action items. And at the end of the meeting, if there's time, we do read them aloud. If not, we do review these at the agenda setting meetings. And we use this time to provide you all with an update on how things are progressing from the Air District side and from multiple agencies who are responsible for each of the agenda or action items. So these processes allow us to create a sense of transparency, accountability for everyone that commits to implementing AB617 in your area and to ensure that we're making progress on the action items that are documented. So I'm going to welcome Rocio, our new colleague, who's going to provide us with an overview of the action item tracker and will give us a sense of what has been done since the last time we met, what are things that we're still working on, and essentially pause to see if there's any questions for clarifications from the Air District. As we go through the agendas items today, we'll make sure that the CSC members have a chance to speak. And then, of course, if there's public members here, you can also ask your questions after the CSC members have asked them during each of the agenda items. So Rocio, on your end, you should be able to share your screen. You should have permissions to share. Go ahead, we're ready when you are.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ramos. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rocio Calderon, and I am a new team member from the Community Strategies and Resources Department. I'm so excited to be here with you all, and I look forward to working closely with you all. And let me go ahead and share my screen to start the action items. Can you all see my screen? Perfect. Okay. So starting off with the first action item, in the last CSC meeting, there was a CSC member who wished to know further information regarding the 2 emission violations that were in the SERP tracker. And so with that, this action item has been completed. The 2 notice of violations were noted in the 4th quarter 2022 enforcement update report, and the leaks from these emission violations were repaired and re-inspected for compliance, and the details have been sent to the CSC member who wanted to know more information. Okay, next action item. Okay, so action item 54.2. In the last CSC meeting, CSC members wished to get further information about pesticide exposures. And with that, the Arvin Lamont did have a pesticide subcommittee on May 30th, and the Shafter CSC community was invited to attend this meeting. In case you guys weren't able to attend or wish to seek further information from the meeting, the link is right here, so you guys can click on that. The next action item for 54.3. So there was a concern from a CSC member that EV charging stations contained toxins. So the district did take a note of this comment, and we will update the CSC on proposed locations and ensure it's at an appropriate location for public health. Okay, so the next action item. So action item 54.4. Residents will receive support in finding all possible incentives that the state will offer. So the district again took note of this comment. And as measures in the SERP intersect with state funding, the district will make sure the CSC is aware of the available incentives and share that with the community. Okay, next action item. So the Air District will invite CalGEM to present at future CSC meetings, and they are present with us today and have a presentation prepared. So thank you, CalGEM, for being present with us. The next action item 53.1. The CCAC will provide overview of Cal EVIP map tool at in-person meeting on May 2023. So the CCAC staff was present at the in-person May meeting in Shafter, and they were there to help share and discuss the maps. So thank you again, CCAC. Next action item 52.2. The Air District to provide a map and design of the road paving, sidewalk installations, and bike paths to Caltrans for them to review and provide recommendations. So staff from the Caltrans, City of Shafter, and County of Kern were on hand during the in-person meeting in May, and they were there to help discuss and review bike path suggestions from CSC members. Okay, going to the next action item, 49.2. The Air District will share more information regarding indoor air filtration project plan updates. And we are very excited and happy to share that the Clean Air Rooms program did launch last week on June 5th. We did send out an email to the CSC communities where we attached a flyer, and we have that flyer here as well. So feel free to share those to community members who you feel can benefit from this program. We highly encourage you to share this flyer, and if you wish, we can also send you guys hard copies to help distribute that and to reach the community members in need. And with that, I will pass it over to Jess to give more updates on the Clean Air Room program. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. I'm going to briefly share my screen. I will start by sharing the flyer that Rocio just mentioned. Please let me know if you see the screen. There should be 2 flyers on the screen, one in English and one in Spanish. Excellent. So this is what we sent out to you all. Like Rocio said, we are happy to send you hard copies to share with folks. We have done a lot of press and social media across the county, down in Kern County, as well as work directly with folks in Shafter. But we want to make sure, because we know it's a priority for you all, that as many folks as possible in the Shafter community take advantage. And I'm going to really quickly show you what it looks like if you haven't done it, or if you're new to this call, or maybe you did it over the phone, but you want to show someone how easy it can be over the computer if they're able to do it on their phone or computer. I'm going to really quickly, going to take us directly to our website. So I'm going to start on this side. We're already on the page, but on this side, I'm going to take you, if you just click that main page, it's a picture of an air purifier. I have the English site over here and the Spanish site over here. For both of them, if you click the apply now, this will take you directly to a portal where folks can check their address. Just so you all know, everyone that is a resident that it lives in the boundary of the Shafter AB617 community is eligible. So, but folks will be able to get the instant feedback. So for example, I'm putting in this address here. It happens to be the address, I believe, of City Hall. So folks might notice. And once you fill this out, it will check eligibility and it will allow you to apply. So this will give folks an immediate response as to whether they're eligible, and then they can go in and start applying. So I realize I now have this both in Spanish, but you can click over to English if you need it in English as well. And so I know a lot of folks are able to and have already called us, and we can also help you directly fill this out. And we can help anyone that you need help with. So what we've done in the past and what we continue to do is, if you know someone that maybe doesn't have access to a computer or a smartphone, call us and we will fill this all out for you. But for those of you that are interested and able to fill it out for yourself, or even help your neighbor fill it out, it is just a 1-page quick form. The only thing you have to do is be able to upload something that describes that you live where you say you live. So just something that has your name and your address. That's an official document. And then other than that, once you submit your application, you'll get confirmation that you're in the system. We have a lot, we launched it last week, and we have a lot of funding available for your community. As you know, we have $1 million. And so there's a lot of folks that are able to take advantage, about 5,000 people. I do see some questions, so I will stop and take those questions, and I'm happy to walk folks through this a little bit. We don't have too much time, but we thought it was important, so we squeezed it in here. So I'll start with Michelle and then go to Bianca.
Jessica, do you know how many people have applied so far? I've been working hard, sending it out, but I was just kind of curious if you had any idea how many people have applied.
I do. I can even give you an estimate based on this morning. So just in the Shafter community, I'm delaying as I'm pulling up that data. But just in the Shafter community alone, we have 161 that have applied. That means we have over 4,800 left. So we have enough for 5,000 units. We're hoping that covers everyone we intended to cover when you all added this into your SERP. So definitely continue the outreach, or let us know if you think that there's someone we can be reaching out to. Specifically, we talked about folks that maybe run in-home daycare facilities. Obviously, they're residents and they live there, but especially if they have a daycare facility where they take care of children, please let us know directly or reach out to them directly about applying. And thank you, Michelle, for passing out that information.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. I was excited to see it. It's really exciting, and the form is very easy, and they're responding very quickly with the grant numbers and everything. And so I think it's going really well. Though it is interesting, you know, the bottom of Wasco, it qualifies in our Shafter realm of influence. So you just never know. Just because you live in Wasco doesn't mean that you may not be eligible.
Yep. Thank you, Michelle. Go ahead, Bianca.
I have a question in regards to the actual filters and things like that. I know in the past we were having that conversation to be more accessible for residents when needed to get that. Were you able to negotiate some type of deal with the buyer? And if so, can you give us an update about it?
Yes, so great question, Bianca. We took in all, and I'm glad you asked that. That was one of my updates as well. A lot, just as a reminder, folks were concerned that perhaps the pilot program we did, or even just a lot of filtration devices out there, it's really hard to find the replacement filter, or the replacement filter can only be purchased through the manufacturer, or it's expensive, or all of the above. We, through this solicitation, we're able to find, we will be putting something out there. First of all, it comes with a replacement. It will be sent directly to you, a replacement filter. But we are also putting together resources on our website of all the different places you can buy the replacement filter. And from what we understand, you can buy it on Amazon, you can buy it at Walmart, you can buy it from the manufacturer, and it is cheaper than the last one, the last pilot program that we did. So we definitely got a better deal this time. So to your point, Bianca, not only do we want to make sure that it's accessible, that folks have multiple places they could buy it, but we also are working on a place on our website where folks can already see where to get a replacement filter should they need one. But I do want to iterate that we are sending filter units and replacement filters right when you sign up.
I do have another question. I'm sorry, just to follow up with it. So the grant that is going out for these filters is coming directly from the 617, or is it in our district fund program because it's a county-wide?
This is separate than the county-wide program. So you all voted back last fall to allocate $1 million to this using SERP funding. You are all within the AB617 boundary, the only eligible folks for using the SERP funding. So you have the same amount of funding that we used valley-wide is being used just in Shafter. So it's $1 million just for Shafter that's coming out of the SERP funding that was reallocated in your SERP.
I wanted to let the resident know if they need any help with applications, just to let me know. I'll be also maybe a second hand to all those residents that need to apply for it. I know that I wanted to make sure that the Air District does give clear detail that if they receive the first round of filters, they're able to apply for the second round, or yes or no?
No, not at this time, because we're trying to make sure as many people as possible get it the first time. We can definitely explore, if not all 5,000 are distributed, making that like the next step. But right now we want to make sure as many people as possible get their very first air filtration device.
Can they return the first one because of the filter being so hard to get? So they could get these new filters for their homes?
That's a great question, Bianca. I don't think that's something we've considered, but I'll write that down as a question that we can explore.
And then I have
some solution to that, I should say.
I have a next question. There's homes that have in the same property, they have two homes. Can the other home also apply if they didn't apply for the first round?
Great question. So you're saying it's the same address, but it's maybe two different units?
Yes.
Great question. Let's, if that is the case and someone runs into, our portal is automated, meaning it automatically knows if the same address is already applied. But we also note on there if folks think this is an error, and I think to your point, there's a couple of cases where that could be the case. Give us a call and we'll work with those folks directly.
Thank you.
Well, I just want to thank all of you who have already done such a great job outreaching. Of those 161, several of those came before we did any media, meaning it all came from you all. And so that's such a good insight into kind of the power you all have in letting your neighbors know about this program. So thank you so much. I will pass it back to Dr. Ramos to take us to our next piece.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And before we transition, just want to note that Cesar in the chat recommended or asked for copies, physical copies, to help with the canvassing. So that goes to make your point that residents and CSC members are helping spread the word. Thank you so much, everyone, for asking your questions and for continuing to engage. As you can see, these action items are written real time. And so this 10-minute session during every CSC meeting allows us to spend some time to reflect on the progress made towards these action items and to ensure that you are kept current on the progress. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and pass it to Vanessa to walk us through our next agenda item.
Thank you, Dr. Ramos, and thanks, Rocio, for reviewing those action items for us. For our next item, we're going to be reviewing feedback that you all provided at the last CSC meeting, so the one in May, at the 3 main tables that we invited folks to visit and provide feedback at. And as a reminder, the topics presented at these tables were residential vehicle replacement, electric vehicle charging infrastructure, and bike paths. In addition, we would like to use this time to solicit your general feedback about how you felt the in-person meeting went. We want to let you know that your feedback is very important to us, as it will help inform future in-person meetings and ensure that they are meaningful and safe spaces for everyone to share their feedback. So now at this time, I'd like to pass the mic on to Jessica. Jessica, would you prefer questions during or after your presentation?
I'm happy to take them during.
Okay, awesome.
Thank you both. This is Amy. I'm sorry to interrupt for 1 second. Because we're going to be soliciting feedback from everyone, we want to make sure that we're capturing our notes correctly. And I'm seeing a few folks still have not renamed themselves, and our team isn't 100% certain which agency you're from or if you're with the public. So I see folks on here like Julie Means and a few other folks that I don't recognize. So if you please could rename yourself and add your agency name in public if you're here on the public's behalf. That way, when we're taking notes about our last meeting, we can adequately capture who is here and who is making what comments and recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ramos, for that very important reminder. And as she mentioned, we'll be sure to write down your questions and develop action items corresponding to next steps. So before we continue, does anyone have any questions or comments that they'd like to share? All right, Jessica, go ahead and take it away whenever you're ready.
Great. All right. Well, I'm going to start by just giving a quick verbal update, but we do have some slides to share. They're not meant for us to go in depth in right now, but just to reflect for you all the feedback that we heard at our in-person meeting, and to note for you all that your feedback was recorded and is now posted on our website. So just as a reminder, we had a fabulous in-person meeting, and as Vanessa mentioned, we are eager to hear your feedback just in general on your thoughts on the meeting and itself and kind of how the meeting flowed. But we did want to also share with you a couple of things in terms of the direct feedback we heard and we solicited from you all. So I'm going to share my screen and just kind of review some of the items. We did just transcribe the notes that you all gave us. As you might recall, if you were there, we had tables around the room for various measures, and we took your notes and summarized them here. But we also wanted you all to know that we took them directly. So you will see just some raw notes from folks. And we are eager to follow up with you all and to follow up on all of these different action items over the next few weeks. So our May in-person meeting, by the way, was great to see you all. I just want to reflect that we really enjoyed ourselves, and we're just so grateful to have dinner with you all, to share a meal, and as we reflected during that meeting, to connect with a few folks even ahead of the meeting about all of your concerns. So thank you so much for sharing that space with us. The first table that we had was about residential vehicle replacement. And as a reminder, this is a measure in the SERP that it's kind of one of the last measures we are launching. So we are hopefully, this has been submitted to the California Air Resources Board, or CARB. And so we hope to have some updates for you soon on it being ready to go, meaning that the program will be open, we think sometime in August or September. Which gives us a lot of time to plan for what sort of outreach we can do about the program. So we did hear a lot of great feedback on places to do outreach. And one of the things I want to note is that all of these outreach ideas, we also recognize are great places to do outreach for lots of different types of programs. And so folks mentioned food distribution sites, churches, the food bank, women's club. We definitely have some folks on the CSC that are very involved in the community. Angie works at CAP-K, Community Action Program of Kern. So there's lots of just great places to do outreach. And we just want to thank you all and acknowledge that we took all of those notes. We look forward to updating you definitely at a meeting where we're talking about incentives about this particular program. I also wanted to note, we wanted to know what upcoming events we could support. And one of the folks mentioned, so Angie on our team here on the CSC mentioned the Stuff the Bus at the Lions Club. So I just want to acknowledge that as well. We also talked about electric vehicle charging infrastructure. As Rocio mentioned, we had this Central California Asthma Collaborative as a partner at this table. And they really helped, I think, not only us as an agency understand where there are areas in Shafter that are ready for some EV infrastructure, but hopefully helped you all understand where the best types of places to place EV chargers were. And so I just want you to know, we will continue to use this list. It's a little hard to see here, but we're posting this for all of your notes. So you guys can take a look at all the notes that were captured. But we're posting this here just to show you that lots of folks took into account the different types of charging they thought would make the most sense, with maybe the slower charging being at places where folks park for a long time. So maybe places like the park or the high school or the rec centers, where the level 3, so those fast chargers, maybe at places where folks don't park for a very long time and they're there for a very brief time, like Apple Market or near the laundromat or at Tin Cup Coffee or at the Fiesta Market Napa. And then finally, there were a couple of other places. One of the things that we noted is that there were definitely several places where folks maybe had different ideas. Maybe it's level 2, maybe it's level 3. So as we continue to work on this program, we have an update for you at our next meeting on some changes we'll make based on all of your input at our last meeting. We will definitely continue to update you on how your input will be used to work with folks to install charging stations. And then our last main table was about bike paths. As a lot of you might have noted, this was a very popular table. I just want to thank folks. We had a lot of public members. These are public meetings and they're for community members. And we were excited to introduce you all to some community members you've never met, and really grateful for their participation as well. We also had a lot of support from the county, Caltrans, and the city at this table, and a lot of comments about the various different places where folks felt like bike path infrastructure made sense. So not only grateful that the district could hear it because we can fund some projects, but also grateful that the right folks heard that. And so we captured all of those notes as well, and we just wanted to share that with you here. Some of the notes also were just about things that aren't maybe in your SERP, but again, these are opportunities to connect with community agencies and different leaders in your community. So some comments were about stoplights, some comments were about restrooms and hydration stations. So definitely just a good opportunity to connect with folks that are kind of in those places where they can help make those changes. And then finally, I think this is our last slide. There were a lot of comments on bike paths and infrastructure, but again, we just wanted folks to know that we did capture all of the notes. We will be posting these for transparency's sake, and we look forward at our next meeting to give updates on all of these measures, knowing that today's meeting is really focused on oil and gas. We just wanted you to know that it did not go unnoticed, that we took lots of great comments from you. I saw that there were maybe chat comments while I was presenting, so I don't know if those were for me regarding this. So I don't know, Vanessa, if you want to help out with that a little bit.
Thanks, Jessica. I think there were a couple of comments clarifying someone's, I guess, screen name, and then Rocio posted the May in-person meeting notes PowerPoint for folks who are interested in following along.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Do we have a couple minutes, Vanessa, if other folks want to just reflect on the meeting itself?
Yes, definitely. We would love folks to share any comments about how they felt the meeting went. It can be constructive or otherwise. Anything that you can share would be really helpful. Feel free to raise your hand or comment in the chat if you prefer that way. Bianca, please go ahead.
I have a question in regards to the tour. Is there going to be any updates to the CSC about the tour and the next steps of finding the green vegetative barriers? And I wanted to give a comment about the meeting. It went very well. I think we had a good number of folks there, and also having the county and the representative being there was very constructive in what the conversation we were talking about. So I appreciate that, and the district doing that outreach. Thank you.
Thank you, Bianca. And yes, to answer your question, at our next meeting, we can have an update on the tour, our findings, and also just progress on the vegetative barriers. I think that's a great idea.
Gustavo, I see you have your hand raised.
Yes, good evening, everyone. Gustavo Aguirre Jr. With the Asthma Collaborative. Just really quick feedback on the meeting. I love seeing everyone in person. It was really great to see everyone in person and have new conversations with people after such a long period of time. The space was beautiful. It was really cool. I say we do our next in-person meeting there, but love the feedback of the residents, the questions. We had conversations with city folks at the city of Shafter, got their feedback, continue the conversation offline. So again, in-person meeting, 100 stars out of 100 stars. And great to meet the biking community in Shafter. That's so sick. That's cool. I didn't know there was so much bikers in Shafter. That was awesome.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Gustavo, for your awesome feedback. Really appreciate it. And Gustavo, I see you have your hand raised as well.
Yeah, Gus Jr., it was my turn. Just a couple of comments, just one clarifying question about bikes. I think as Gus Jr. mentioned, I think a lot of bikers, I think they call themselves like that, from Chapter, the club. One clarifying question is it the same for bikes, without engine, without motor? and motorcycles is the same line that they normally use, or is different? I think if I see Jessica say no, it may be good to clarify those different things. All are important. I'm not saying that are not important, but just to clarify that.
Yeah.
So that's one comment, and the other comment is I think I believe on the pesticide table, I believe, or green barriers, I believe, there was no one there to help us. I think it will be great to have someone, on these in-person meetings, to have someone in charge of each table, each topic, to help, the participants on that. And the third one is, yes, I think in-person meetings are needed, at least, from time to time. I think it's always good to meet people in person. When you meet in person, things happen that those things don't happen online. So I believe it that, in-person meetings are needed, even if not every meeting, but, from time to time is good to have those.
Gustavo, yes, we agree. We love the in-person meetings. I'll just say we'll update you all and get feedback from you all. We hope to do one more before the end of the year, which really, if you think about the number of meetings left, that's only, a handful of meetings away, which is kind of crazy to think about, but we are halfway through. So yes, we agree. We're eager. I appreciate the comments and support for the same location. We appreciated that location for a variety of reasons as well. I do want to clarify, I keep using the term bikers, and we have cyclists is probably a better term. All of the folks that showed up are cyclists that use bicycles powered by themselves, right? So not motorcycles. So they were talking about bike lanes for like bicycles. And so that's a great point to help clarify, because I even sometimes say bikers, and some people think I'm talking about like a biker that rides a motorcycle around, which sometimes is a typical term used as well. So I'm trying, and maybe we can all try to use the term cyclist, I think is a better term. And the cycling community definitely showed up, and they were all eager to learn about bike lanes for safe bicycling. And then your other point, I think, Gustavo, is we were hoping, our intention during the agenda setting wasn't necessarily at that meeting to address vegetative barriers. We were just we were giving a visual for folks to see all the feedback they gave at the last meeting. So that's why we didn't have anyone there, but that's a good point. And we made that note as well with our facilitation team. So thanks for that feedback.
Yes, thank you so much, Gustavo, for that very valuable feedback. And I want to elevate a comment in the chat from Cesar, Socorro, Felipa, and Anabel. Is there an update in green barriers? So sorry if I missed it. So just want to check in with you all to make sure you didn't have any follow-up questions.
No, they were all answered.
Okay, thank you so much. Does anyone else have any reflections they'd like to share about the in-person meeting, or any questions or comments they'd like to share about any of the 3 topics that we've discussed? Linda?
Can I ask a question that might not have been addressed at the in-person? I wasn't able to go, but I just was wondering if we could get an update on where we're at with that RFP on the trees. Because I know we've got the vegetative barrier and the urban greening, and I was just wondering where we're at with that RFP, because I think it went back out again, right?
The RFP, yeah, and I can give just a brief update. We did get a response to the RFP for vegetative barriers, and we did at the in-person meeting show folks where the wonderful company had responded and suggested 3 places that they would plant trees. But we did have a lot of funding still left over. And so I can check in with the team. We've been doing more direct outreach to folks that we heard own locations that are of concern and of interest to the community, and are encouraging them to continue to apply. I don't have that direct information right now, Linda, as to the exact timing of that, but I can make sure that's part of our update. We do plan to send an update email after today's meeting because we won't have time for standing updates. And I can just make sure we add an update on vegetative barriers.
Well, so there was the vegetative barriers, and then I feel like the urban greening with the trees that we had all placed at different parks. We had like a subcommittee on it. I feel like that one's kind of fallen off the radar, and I was just wondering where that is, because I think we sent out an RFP. No one applied, and I thought maybe another one went out. I could be mistaken.
We did. We've been working with, the Kern Tree Foundation.
Okay.
We did have some contracting. There were just lots of questions on logistics. And so we've just been working with them and with CARB on how to make sure that that contract is doable for that group.
Are we working at all with the city of Shafter, since those areas that we all suggested, some of the parks like Veterans off Los Angeles? I believe the city would own that. Are we working with them at all too with Kern Tree?
Good question. I'm not being super directly involved. I can note all of these questions down and make sure that's part of our update. I do know that the way that it works with those contracts is that once we have the contract in place, it's really us and Kern Tree working with whoever we're trying to work with to plant that. And since we're just not there at that point, I don't know that that's happened yet, but I can make sure that I have all those answers.
Okay, if you need any help with contacts, just please let me know.
Thank you, Linda.
Happy to help. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Any final questions, comments, or reflections before we move on to the next agenda item? Okay, I'm not seeing any hands raised or any comments in the chat, so I'm going to go ahead and pass it on to Dr. Ramos to introduce our oil wells in the community item.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you for your engagement. Based on popular demand, we have CalGEM here today from the Methane Task Force to present the community with an overview regarding their responsibilities and enforcements, as well as any other updates from the Methane Task Force. So CalGEM, or the California Geologic Energy Management Division, is an agency that regulates oil and gas production in the state. As you all know, some of you have attended some of the subcommittee meetings, and some of you did attend CalGEM's presentation when they presented at the Arvin Lamont CSC meeting. So we're really excited to see familiar faces here to give the presentation and to listen to the presentation again and learn more closely about what is happening and to essentially learn real time. So Courtney is going to give us an overview with her team, and together they will be taking questions during the presentation. Remember that this presentation is for you, CSC members. So please feel free to ask questions or any kind of clarification types of comments or questions that you may have, so that we can all follow along and be included along with the presentation. So on our end, we'll be sure to write down any questions that you have so that we can bring it back to the agenda setting meeting if you all have some follow-up action items based on the informational presentation that CalGEM will be doing. I'm not sure who's going to be kicking us off, Courtney, on your end, so I'll just pass it to you. Courtney, I will be monitoring hands for you. Feel free to step in and ask for support as you need it. But I'll keep track of the hands and also comments so that you can feel free to engage with the presentation and the content.
I really appreciate that, Dr. Ramos. In particular, I could use help if folks leave comments in the chat, because I can't watch that and everything else.
Exactly. It's too much. It's too much. That's what we're here for. So
excellent.
The floor is yours. Thank you.
Great. Well, good evening, everyone. As Dr. Ramos said, I'm Courtney Smith. I am the Chief Deputy of Programs for CalGEM. It stands for the California Geologic Energy Management Division. I'm actually joined today by several colleagues at CalGEM and also a few from the California Air Resources Board. We're really glad to be here with you today. We're also very grateful to be invited to join your meeting. So that way we can share with you some efforts that we have underway that speaks to some of the concerns that have been raised by the Shafter community regarding emissions from oil and gas operations in your community. Importantly, too, we want to create space, and I know we have plenty of time to have a conversation and discussion. We're really looking forward to getting feedback from you to inform some of these efforts as we move forward together. I know many of you may be aware, Jessica mentioned it, we were recently invited to the Arvin Lamont Community Steering Committee meeting. And from that, we've been having some really great engagement. So again, we're really excited to be here and to hopefully have some similar conversations with you all. Before we start though, I want to acknowledge that our division, we tend to use a lot of technical terms that even I'm still learning. I'm not an engineer. I'm not a geologist. So we're going to do our best when we have this conversation to avoid using really complicated terms. But please, if at any time you need us to break down or clarify something that we're saying, don't hesitate to ask. I have been with the division for over 2 years, and I'm still always asking our engineers and geologists to break down things for me. So open invitation. Okay, so to start, we can go to the next slide. I want to just talk through what we're hoping to share with you all so you know where we're headed. So to start, we want to share first with you all who we are and what we do. We also want to center everyone on the concerns that have been raised by your community members in your community emission reduction plan. So we will review that. We also thought it would be really helpful to provide some context regarding oil and gas wells in your community. And then that'll be really nice and set the stage for us to be able to share with you guys updates on a few key efforts that we have underway that really are aimed at identifying and addressing wells of concern in communities. And that includes an update on our state abandonment program. My colleague Robert is going to share more on that. We want to talk about our broad inspection program in the entire region. My colleague Rohit will touch on that. And then also we want to share with you a little bit on a joint inspection effort that we recently did in the Arvin Lamont community, and to have a similar discussion with you all on if a similar effort would be of interest to you and what that might be, what that might look like. I just want. Okay, so with that, we can go ahead and start. So I'm getting some feedback. Okay, I think feedback has been muted. Thanks. Okay, so just to start and to provide an overview of CalGEM, so we are a state agency, and we are the state agency that has regulatory authority over the drilling, the operation, and the permanent closure of wells that are within the oil, gas, and geothermal industries within California. And our mission is to be able to carry out that oversight while also protecting public health, safety, and the environment. We can go to the next slide. Okay, so very briefly, and as a reminder to you all, one of the measures identified in the Shafter Community Emissions Reduction Plan, it's actually the only measure that I identified that pertains to oil and gas operations, is measure LU3, which really calls for the Air District to work with CalGEM on a land use setback for new wells within 2,500 feet of residents, schools, and environmentally sensitive locations. And I'm sure that many of you are aware that last year, the governor worked with the legislature to pass Senate Bill 1137. This bill created a prohibition on CalGEM issuing permits for both new and existing wells within 3,200 feet of schools, residences, businesses, and other sensitive receptors. It also had other requirements as well, but it did have a provision, a setback provision in it. This bill went into effect January 1st, 2023, and CalGEM actually created and passed regulations to support implementing these new rules that were effective January 1st. We also upheld and implemented the rules, and that was until February 3rd. And what happened February 3rd is that the Secretary of State, that's the day the Secretary of State certified a referendum effort. So what I mean by that is there was an effort to challenge the legislation. They collected signatures, and on February 3rd, the Secretary of State certified that enough signatures had been submitted for the referendum to move forward. And that basically means that it qualified to be put on the next general election ballot, which is November 2024. So according to law, a statute that's challenged by a qualified referendum is stayed. So to say it simply, the law now requires CalGEM to pause on implementing the requirements until it goes before voters at the required election. So I did want to speak to one of the measures that was identified in your SERP. However, there are many other activities and efforts that we have underway that we felt would be of interest to you all, given your identified concerns with oil and gas operations in your area. So that's what we plan to cover with you today. I think we can go to the next slide. Perfect. Yeah. Before we jump in, we thought that it would be helpful to give an overview of what oil and gas wells are located in your community. So when you look within the Shafter 617 designated community boundary that you all developed, there are a total of 60 wells in the community. Now, of those 60, there's some different categories I want to walk through. So this 60 wells includes 11 that are characterized as plugged and abandoned, which I wish we didn't use that term. It's an industry term because it's confusing. What it means is those are wells that have already been permanently capped and sealed in order to prevent emissions or leaks into the air or into the water. So 11 wells have been permanently capped in your area. In addition to that, there are 38 wells that are characterized as active, meaning that they're actively being used for oil and gas production, or they have been idle for a short time, under 24 months. And lastly, there are 11 wells in the community characterized as idle. This means the well hasn't been used for 2 years or more. And in this region, both the active and idle wells are operated by CRC, one operator. So if we go to the next slide, perfect. We have a map of the wells that I just described. So that way you can have a visual representation of where they're located. You can also get a sense sort of the number of wells that are within a 7-mile boundary around Shafter. One thing that I wanted to note, because we did spend some time with Arvin Lamont talking about wells in their area that we believe are orphan. I did want to note that for Shafter, we have not identified any wells in your community as being likely orphan. What an orphan well is it is a well for which we have some evidence that suggests it's been deserted and that there is no longer a viable current or a prior operator with the financial resources to actually cover the cost of sealing it. And so when a well doesn't have a viable operator to manage the well, it falls to the state to address, it falls to CalGEM. And so we don't have any of these wells in your boundary area, but we do understand that this group is likely still interested in updates on a newly expanded effort that we have underway to address orphan wells in this state. So I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Robert Schaaf, who is going to share with you all and provide an update on what we're doing to address orphan wells that have fallen to the state with our state abandonment program. You there, Robert? You're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Perfect.
Yeah, I'm having computer problems, so bear with me. But as Courtney says, an orphan well is a deserted well that is determined to have no legally responsible current or prior operator with resources to cover the cost of plugging and abandoning that well. So our state abandonment program is addressing these orphan wells. And the good news for Shafter is that, as Courtney said, there aren't any in the 617 boundary or within the 7-mile buffer around Shafter. So at the moment, Shafter's in good position for this because these orphan wells are a risk. They can leak oil, they can leak gas, and other air emissions into the air or water. So we have to keep a close eye on them, and the program that we have is to address these wells that don't have the operators that have the financial resources and have deserted these wells. In the past, we haven't had much funding to address this problem, but fortunately now that has changed. We have $100 million in state funding available to us, up to $165 million in federal funding that we could be getting. And then there's industry funding that we get on a smaller scale that helps develop this program. So since we had this kind of money, we put together a prioritization method in which pick which wells that we can or would like to abandon across the state, because we have to recognize the fact that even though we do have a lot more money now, we don't have enough money to address all the orphan wells in the state. Next slide, please. So as we put together the program, we used the values of CalGEM and the state to put the program together. We wanted to address climate action, the environment, of course, public health and safety, sure that we were efficiently spending the money, doing as many wells as we can with the money that we're getting, that it's done across the state of California, and that we still do keep industry responsible for their part in abandoning wells out there. And if they have the resources to abandon wells that they've deserted, we still want to get them to fund those wells. And as we're doing here today, we've had a significant amount of community engagement where we want to get the priorities from the local communities around the state to see what wells they want to do or wells that are a particular problem to that community. Next slide, please. So to develop this orphan well prioritization method, we first put out a draft orphan well prioritization in September of 2022. We had public workshops about them. We received public comment through October of last year. And we actually did receive 45 verbal and written comments, which you can be seen on our conservation website. In February of this year, we put out the final orphan well prioritization methodology and GIS tool, and we presented it at the Methane Task Force meeting. Next slide, please. So the method uses a ranking system that's based on well-specific risk factors that include the risks that the well may pose to the nearby communities and to the environment. And so we were picking wells that were near communities or to environmentally sensitive areas. And a number of the priorities are that they're wells that within 3,200 feet of sensitive receptors, wells that have had a history of leaks, and also wells in communities that don't have the kind of representation that they probably need to get them on the list. So we looked at dealing with wells in disadvantaged communities. And we've also taken into account local priorities from meetings that we've had with the local governments and communities, as well as making sure we're doing it across the state of California, and then we're getting as many wells as we can with the money that has been given to us. Next slide, please. So with that, we are moving forward with our program. We've met with a lot of the local governments to determine their local priorities, and with the information that we receive to them, we are putting out a draft expenditure plan that we plan to release at the June 27th Methane Task Force meeting. This plan will include proposed potential early state abandonment projects for public consideration. And we still would like to get public feedback from people that are interested in that during that meeting and as well as after that meeting or even before that meeting. And that can be done through our email that's taking these comments at calgem.orphanwells@conservation.ca.gov. So with that, if there are any questions, I'd be happy to take them. And if not, I'd like to turn the meeting over to Rohit Sharma, our Chief Deputy.
Thank you, Robert. Good afternoon, everybody. Again, my name is Rohit Sharma, and I'm Acting Chief Deputy of Operations with CalGEM. So I'm going to talk about CalGEM's Central District Inspection Program, which also covers Shafter community. Inspections are a very important part of CalGEM's day-to-day work. Our inspectors go out daily to witness the test, inspections, well leases, facilities. So during field inspections, encounter a violation, then we issue a notice of violation to the operator and conduct a re-inspections of those violations if they had been corrected. The focus of these inspection is to protect public health and environment. So what we look for, go out and inspect the wells. There are a number of things we look for in those wells. For example, well sign that need to have a well name, well number, lease name, name and emergency number of the operator, whether these wells have a refuse or waste present, if the well has accessible, if they have a road to access the well, well should not be open to the surface, whether there are weeds present that could create hazard, whether the well cellar is free of the fluid, and whether they are covered. Another thing we look for is if the wells are urban wells. If they are urban wells, then they need to have an enclosure. The well should also not be leaking, and our inspectors check all well components like pipelines and valves. Next slide, please. So here's the overview of Central District's field engineering effort. Inland District has around 2,800 active leases, over 81,000 wells that include active, idle, and permitted wells. We also have 7,100 tanks and vessels, which we inspect. Currently, there are 27 field staff who carry out the bulk of environmental inspections in the Central District. And we have 12 vacancies in the field engineering team. Our goal is to inspect all these leases, wells, facilities every 3 to 4 years. But we have a very limited resources, so inspection prioritization is developed. So what is in that prioritization? We give priority to the urban, and Central District also plan to inspect all the critical and environmental sensitive wells and facilities annually. Next slide, please. So in 2022, we have performed over 59,000 inspections in the Central District, out of which over 32,000 were environmental inspections. These includes 2,144 critical wells that are located within the 300 feet of communities and environmental sensitive areas. We also sent 589 violations to the operator of these wells. Next slide, please. So Central District plans to inspect all 2,258 critical and environmental sensitive wells in urban areas and respond to any complaints from the public. This includes community. Next slide, please. Again, this is the map of Schefter community boundary, and the green dots you see on the map represent the well location within those within or close to the community. Okay, now I will hand over to Matthew Buffelman. He's our enforcement chief.
All right, thank you, Rohit. Next slide, please. Once again, my name's Matthew Buffelman. I'm the enforcement chief at CalGEM, and today I'm here to discuss our inspection and enforcement component of the methane task force. So CalGEM and CARB were directed by the governor to address methane leaks from oil and gas infrastructure and to engage the surrounding communities to take action to address these leaks. CalGEM, CARB, and the Air District, we've agreed to work together on inspections and enforcement, which includes developing and sharing expertise and coordinating our joint inspection efforts. I want to note that this joint inspection effort is in addition to regular inspections carried out by each agency. Next slide, please. So I'm briefly going to cover the authorities for each one of these agencies. So CalGEM has broad authority over oil and gas operations to ensure wells and facilities are well maintained and all safety and environmental requirements are being followed, including that the facilities are kept in a leak-free environment. CARB has authority to ensure compliance with CARB's oil and gas methane regulation, which requires oil and gas operators, if they're not already subject to local air district rules, to add emission controls and replace high-emitting equipment. It also requires inspections for leaks and to repair them. Next slide, please. The Air District has primary authority over stationary sources of pollution, including most oil and gas operations, which includes requirements to obtain district permits for equipment like vapor release and recovery equipment. The Air District also has a memorandum of understanding, an MOU, with CARB to enforce many aspects of CARB's oil and gas methane regulation. Next slide, please. I want to talk a little bit our initial phase of our joint inspection effort. We identified active and idle wells near the Arvin-Lamont communities within 3,200 feet of boundaries of these communities. We identified 67 wells and actually ended up inspecting 68 wells over 3 days. We also inspected tanks or pressure vessels if they were located near these wells. We provided a status update to Arvin-Lamont the week following these inspections, and we're providing regular updates on our website. And I'll drop that link in our chat. And there's an update both in English and Spanish there. Next slide, please. So for future inspection efforts, we want to work with your community to help determine our efforts. We can potentially inspect active and idle wells within or near your community, or a subset of active and idle wells around Bakersfield. And we want to understand if there's other community priorities where a joint inspection force would be beneficial. Next slide, please. So we did have a couple of questions that we would like to engage you on today and in the future too. Does the community have priority concerns that can guide a potential joint inspection effort in the community? And are there any other efforts or activities that were presented here today that are of interest to the community? And if so, what's the best way to continue to engage you on these interests? Next slide, please. So our next steps, CalGEM, CARB, and the Air District will continue our joint inspections based on community input and our resource availability. I'll also note that while resource availability may preclude all 3 agencies from conducting joint inspections together at any given time, we will continue to coordinate remediation and enforcement efforts based on inspection results and monitoring efforts from our participating agencies. We also want to develop an approach engaging your community on topics of interest. Next slide, please. Now I'm going to pass it off to Rohit to once again talk about what to do in case you're concerned about a gas leak.
Thank you, Matthew. While the programs and efforts we just outlined to help identify and address methane leaks from active, idle, and orphan wells, the results of these programs may take time, and they cannot always find leaks immediately. That is why we highly encourage members of who have immediate concern about these gas leaks in the community to dial 911. This includes, for instance, if they hear leaking gas coming from the well or attendance facilities, if you might see gas bubbling up within the cellar of a well, or if you feel something like a seismic event that could have disrupted oil and gas infrastructure, call 911 immediately. We encourage folks who may smell gas to not only dial 911, but to also call their local gas utilities. Since the natural gas is odorless and colorless, mercaptan is a foul-smelling gas that added in to the natural gas used in the homes to make it easier to detect. If community members smell gas, they should call their gas utilities immediately, as it may indicate a leak in the community or within the natural gas distribution system. And lastly, if community members see black oil on the ground, they should report the spill to the Office of Spill Prevention and Response at the number provided on the slide. Community member may also have concern about the impact of oil and gas production on their local air quality and public health, and as such can contact their local air district and public health department with those questions. Lastly, the community member may have a complaint about an operator or about the oil and gas facilities in their community. CalGEM has set up a number. CalGEM has a new dedicated website and a process to receive and respond to the community complaints. Community members their directly at ca.gov. This email box is checked.
You cut out for a little bit, Rohit. If you can go back a couple sentences.
Okay, yeah. So I was talking about if the community member have a complaint about the operator, the oil and gas facility in their community, CalGEM has a new dedicated website and process to review and respond to the community complaints. Community member can submit their concern directly to communityconcern@conservation.ca.gov. This email box is checked daily by the representative within each district who can assist in addressing the issues. Next slide, please. And thank you. And over to Courtney.
Yeah, I'll take it. Thanks so much, everyone. Thanks, Rohit. I was hoping we could go back to the slide that has our discussion questions. I really appreciate your guys' patience so we could get through our content, but now we want to create some space to hear from you all. Couple more, we're almost there. Perfect. So as Matt outlined, we were we presented a plan for a joint inspection to Arvin Lamont and got feedback on it, and then carried out that plan and presented the results to them. And we are here today because we want to know if there are priority concerns that you all have that might guide doing a similar effort, a similar joint inspection effort in this community. So let's just pause with that question, and I would love to hear folks' thoughts. Gustavo.
Junior or senior?
Oh, I only see, I'm sorry, your name's cut off.
Junior.
No worries.
You're
I think
junior.
that's
Just
me.
messing with
Okay,
you.
I'm kidding.
Okay.
Yeah. So one of my questions is like, how are orphan wells actually like registered, accounted for? Is there like some kind of graduate thing that happens, or is just someone at some point registered it and just no activity has happened in X amount of time?
That is a really excellent question. So right now we have, and let's maybe Robert, while we're chatting, can you drop in the chat the link to our GIS tool and our mapping and our program? So Robert's going to give a bit of information here. The answer to this is embedded in there, but like, I'll just tell you, we went through a process within CalGEM to identify wells that we thought were orphaned. And the way that we did that is basically a well, if there is evidence that an operator deserted its well, and for us, that means they are not complying with the requirements that we have, that is evidence that they very well have deserted it and there's nobody around. But that's the process we go through to identify wells that are likely orphan. Now, for us to actually declare a well orphan, we have to go through a legal process. And that is something that we have been doing at a scale that CalGEM has never done before. What that entails is issuing an order to the operator to permanently plug the well. If they don't comply with that, then we do research on that operator to see if there is a previous operator that we could hold accountable and if they might have assets that we can go after. But at that point, we basically then can make, if the answer to those are no, we presume that it's orphan and we move forward. So I hope that answers your question. We did a survey of the whole state of wells that we have evidence that they have deserted because they're not complying with our requirements. But then for us to make the official legal determination, we have a process that we go through.
And a follow-up to that question is, how far in time does that survey go back, or when did that survey start?
Oh, that's an excellent question. So that survey was conducted based in December 2021. Sorry, I got to get my years right. And since then, we have done additional evaluation on those operators to inform the expenditure plan we're about to release. So what I mean by that is, as Robert mentioned, in a few weeks, we're very excited to present to the public proposed early projects for abandonment to get folks' feedback to agree or not agree that they're good projects to start on. And we actually had to do a lot of work to make sure that that those projects are focused on operators that we've gone through that legal process to actually determine our orphan. So there's a lot of work that went into ensuring that they're orphan. And then one of the things too that I'll add to that, Gustavo, is that we plan, you'll see in the draft expenditure plan, we plan to share with folks what our plan is for updating and communicating on these efforts and our orphan well inventory in a regular cadence. So that will be laid out in the draft expenditure plan. Cool. Other reflections, comments, thoughts? Oh, Bianca. Hi, Bianca. Nice to see a familiar virtual
Hi.
face.
Yes. I have a question in regards. You were mentioning about going back, if not finding who is responsible of those abandoned wells, you would go back to their assets. Would you go back to the owner's assets or just the company itself? Because there's a big difference. They might put themselves as corporate, and would you go for corporate or the individual that lives the idle well there? Another question that I do have, I know that you were mentioning there's none in the area, but there's been a number of leaking wells around the area in the past. Would there be any follow-up in case if they do the same violation now? Because I know that sometimes I'm saying it in the sense that corporations get a small fine and they'll continue doing it because it's a small fine for them. Do you follow up? And if so,
I only heard part of that. Are you there, Bianca?
sorry, my daughter, she's in summer school too, so she's using the same Wi-Fi, so I'm so sorry. But my follow-up question is, do you follow up with any if a violation is done, do you follow up just to make sure that they don't do another violation in the area?
Yes, I'm actually going to invite Rohit to share with you all. If we find a leak or any sort of violation, we have a very rigorous program for going out and making sure the operator fixes it. So I'm going to let Rohit share what that is.
Yeah, thank you, Courtney. Yeah, that's basically it. We go out, do the inspection. If we found out violations, we send a notice of violation to the operator and give them certain time to fix those violations. We go back again and confirm if the violation has been fixed. If violation is fixed, we close the violation, and we come back again when we do a yearly inspection. If there is a violation not been fixed, then it escalate up to the enforcement, and then we have an enforcement process to address those violations through the remedial order or PNR order, civil penalties, whatever the case may be.
Great, and then I'll answer your other question, Bianca, which had to do with when we go through our process to identify if a operator has any assets, who do we do that for? And I'll just say generally, our authorities are really focused on holding the operator accountable. We are very limited in terms of seeking action or funds from, for instance, the mineral rights owner or the surface property owner. So we very much are limited in focusing on the operator. One thing I'll say though is we do have the ability to review the chain of ownership or the chain of operators. And if there was a previous operator that transferred after 1996, we are able to go to them and hold them accountable. So that is part of our review as we look at if there are any other operator entities that may have transferred those wells after 1996, and we will hold those folks accountable as well. Did I answer all your questions, Bianca? Did Rohit and I get it?
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. Annabelle?
Hello. Sorry, I don't mean to be deceptive. This is Cesar. I'm here with Annabelle and the rest of the chapter pro. But I love I love the fact that the methane task force is participating with the CSC in the Arvin and Lamont area. The wells were able to be repaired rather quickly, much quicker than they would be otherwise. And I think the reason that the NOVs came about is because the inspectors were on site and were able to confirm, levels of whatever was monitored. I think one thing that I think would be good to include in the Shafter area, just to, I think be focused on public health, is to take samples when leaks are found, so that we can find out what other toxic contaminants may be coming out. And also possibly a notification for any homes or sensitive receptors that are found near wells that are at explosive levels.
I did canvassing in Arvin near some of the leaking wells, and a lot of the residents shared a lot of the same symptoms in the same time window that are indicative of a gas leak. So I think it would be, a good piece of the puzzle to include doing that community outreach notification, doing that air sampling, and also, being able to address the leaks the way that it happened in Arvin and Lamont, because that was amazing coordination, and I'm happy that it happened. So I feel like this is a good blueprint moving forward, and I'm happy to see the results moving forward.
Thanks for that feedback, Cesar. I also am very happy with how it went. It was a really awesome learning opportunity, and we were able to really strengthen our coordination with the Air Resources Board and the Air District. Absolutely recognize and hear you, as you very much alluded to. The focus with the Arvin Lamont inspection was very much focused on using methane to quickly identify and address leaks and address any immediate safety concerns with methane explosivity levels. And definitely after we presented results, I know we heard in the Ivan meeting as well, even though I wasn't able to be there, I know that that the request was made to better understand, and there's a desire to understand the co-constituents, right, that might be present. So I just wanted to reflect that, like, I personally understand that request, and it makes sense because I want to acknowledge that, yeah, there's a lot more that we need to understand about what other toxic compounds might be present in leaks. And also it may be different in different locations based on the oil and gas formation. So it is something that we're actively talking about within the methane task force. We're taking that feedback and working together with both Carbon and the Air District to figure out how we might be able to do more just to better understand what co-constituents might be present in leaks. So definitely hear you. And then the other thing I think we've shared is we are evaluating and figuring out what the protocols might be for when we know, like, notification protocols, right? Like, are we clear when we notify OES? Are we clear when we need to call in first responders? Are we clear when we think this might actually present an immediate threat to the local community and we need to start knocking on doors? And what does that look like? And candidly, this has been a really awesome opportunity for us to identify that is something we got to talk about and figure out. So appreciate your comment and agree.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's awesome, and I think, I'm happy to hear that feedback is getting taken in and processed. If there's anything that we can do as a CSC, to leverage the ability to make that happen, I think we would love to do that. Maybe if we can vote on taking those as a CSC, I'm sure people would love to vote yes, that they would love that increased enforcement here as a CSC. But I know it will be harder to do this kind of public protective practices outside of the CSC communities. So if there's anything that we can do to be as inclusive as possible, I would love to have those opportunities presented before the inspections happen, so we can capture those health effects properly.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing you'll note, we a little slight difference with Arvin Lamont. We had sorry, one sec. I can't see. There we go. When we energy efficient building, which is a good thing. When we came to Arvin Lamont, we had a proposal for the joint inspection that we got input on, and we tweaked it a little based on the input and then ran with that. As you'll notice here, like we're keeping it more open. We want to hear what is of interest to this community. So I think there's some room and opportunity, Cesar, to have those conversations. We're not prepared to go out and do inspections next week. We want to make sure we're on the same page with what that looks like.
Thank you. And a thumbs up from everyone here in the room as well.
Cool. Are there any other, just piggybacking on Cesar's comment, are there any other perspectives around priority concerns that might guide a joint inspection in the Shafter area?
Yes, I'm so sorry to jump in.
No.
there in the barrier, there were a lot of wells on the edge. And I think if maybe we can include some of those wells to properly illustrate edge effects from contaminants that may be coming in from those most near the boundary right outside, I think it would be good to include those in the inspections.
Okay, taking notes. So you're referring to, we've got the community boundary and then it looks like there's just a couple wells that are just like right on the outside of it, and that would be equally important to look at.
Yeah, there was some like right to the southeast, and then right to the east, there was a big patch. So I think those two patches might be a good way to find any, contaminants that may produce edge effects in the health studies.
I'm sorry, you referenced help might be helpful in terms of providing insight into effects from health studies. Were you referring to a health study?
No, I'm sorry. I just meant like the health of the community overall, like understanding where the emissions are coming from. Sorry.
Okay, that makes sense. Perfect. Just want to make sure I didn't miss anything. Okay. Other feedback on priority concerns? Okay, maybe we can pivot then. I know we already got some questions already on orphan wells and like the state abandonment program, which is awesome. Just wanted to create space to see if there's any other efforts or activities that we talked about that may be of interest to folks. And if so, how we can continue to provide you updates or information on those efforts. While we are waiting, I will put in another plug for our June 27th methane task force meeting, because that is a quarterly public meeting that we do. And the goal is really to create a clearinghouse, like a one-stop where we can share across CARB and the Cal EPA and CalGEM and the Natural Resources Agency updates on all the things that we're doing to address methane leaks from oil and gas. So that's a great venue to check in and plug in. If there's anything specific or additional that y'all would like us to talk to you all about or go deeper on, please let us know. We're happy to do it.
Hi, Courtney. I'm seeing a comment that Cesar posted in the chat regarding flares. So Cesar, Socorro, Felipa, and Annabelle are interested in learning about whether they are also inspected.
Flaring. So I don't want to punt too much to the Air District, but I do think that is your regulatory oversight jurisdiction. So I might invite you to maybe answer that.
Yes, so that is something that the district has a rule for. And we're happy, given more time, to put together an overview. I think sometime in the end of summer last year, we gave an overview of our enforcement programs, which included all the inspections we do at stationary sources, including flares, storage tanks, and a variety of other things that are under the district's jurisdiction. And so I'm happy, not only after I'm done talking, I'll link that presentation just as a reminder to folks, but I'm also happy to have us do a refresher at an upcoming meeting.
Great. Any other efforts or activities or oil and gas related questions? Okay.
That's it, Courtney. I think we're good.
Great. Well, before I hand over the mic, I just want to thank again the community group for giving us this chance to share some of the things we're working on and to give us some really helpful feedback. It's nice to know that your work is important, and I appreciate engaging with you guys on it.
Thank you so much. And just as a follow-up action item, for those of you who requested hard copies of the presentation, you will be receiving those via mail. And at this time, we would like to open it up to public comment and questions. So if you have any questions about the presentation that you just listened to and you're a part of the public and you are here in a learning mode, we are opening up the floor to you. Okay, we are going to interpret the silence as no questions at this time. So that concludes this presentation. We're going to go ahead and move to the next agenda item. Bonnet, take it away, please.
Thank you, Dr. Ramos. Let me share my screen once again. Okay, can everyone see my screen okay? Okay, perfect. So as a reminder, we're going to be skipping standing updates for today. Those updates will be sent via email. So our next agenda item will be our wrap up next steps and agenda setting. First of all, want to thank you all once again for engaging in today's meaningful topics, for sharing reflections, questions, comments that help address your community's concerns around air quality. As we're approaching the end of our meeting, I'd like to take a moment to remind you all about a couple of upcoming meetings. So our next agenda setting meeting will take place next Monday, June 19th at 4 p.m. via Zoom. And as always, we encourage all members of the CSC to attend if they're able to, and welcome your additional suggestions on how to improve the accessibility of these meetings, whether you can attend these meetings or not. You can always let us know by raising your hand or speaking via the chat, or if you would rather reach out to us at a later time, you can also reach out to the Air District or to our team at Hardware Company using the contact information that you see on this slide. As for the next CSC meeting, there will be no July meeting scheduled for all CSCs. So we will see you on Monday, August 14th from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. via Zoom for our next CSC meeting. We hope to see you all there. And now we will take a moment to review the action items captured in our tracker during our meeting today. Jem will now share her screen and read those out. As Jem shares oh, Bianca, I see you have a question.
I have a question in regards to the annual report that is done to CARB. Are you guys going to present in August a draft? Because I know it goes back in October, but we usually have a couple months to review it for the CSC to give any public comment.
Yes, Bianca. Sorry, this is Jessica with the Air District. Yes, to Bianca's point, in August, we will plan to briefly talk about the annual report and then give folks time between August and September to review what the district has pulled together and then have a more in-depth discussion in September. That's been our practice the past few years. And just so you all know, we have been taking it to our board in November. So we do have actually a few months with the CSC to review any of the annual reports.
Michelle?
Yeah, I just wanted to note I haven't gotten to do the standing update section. Kind of felt like we were moving forward. Did I miss something? I don't know.
And I can help answer that. Given what we learned the past few times we've had oil and gas presentations, we had automatically decided to send out standing updates. But Michelle, I think maybe we have some time if you have one to provide, but the agenda doesn't have it. Yeah, we didn't have it on the agenda this time.
Oh, I see. It says it was going to be sent by email. Sorry, I just saw the bold and didn't read the detail. But yeah, I super quick though, but I did want to give a little bit of a personal touch to one of the things that's going to be on there. So there's going to be at least 3 things that we're going to send out to you. And the first one is going to be about off-road vehicle regulation. So the staff at CARB that do this off-road rulemaking are looking to talk to community members. And so they are willing to set up individual meetings with anybody who's interested, or small group meetings, or even meetings with multiple communities, whatever you want. They're completely open. And so I just wanted to let you know, that this information is going to come out and that there really is a real person on the other end who will answer, and would love to hear whatever you have to say about this regulation that basically ends up, impacting your community. And also just want to point out, I can't remember if I've told this group before, but the US EPA has a pesticides labeling meeting coming up in 3 days. So you might be interested in participating in that. And then we will also be sending out information about our blueprint for the Community Air Protection Program. And that is out for public comment. And as soon as I have the Spanish translation, we will send out a link. So just wanted to mention those things. Thanks.
Thanks, Michelle. Linda, you have your hand raised?
Michelle just mentioned something about regulations on off-road. What does that mean? Does that mean like the quads or tractors that the farmers use? I don't understand. What does that mean?
Yeah. So they say things like forklifts and things like that. So there's various ways that they define it. I'm not even sure if I fully understand all the different kinds of vehicles that are included in it, but yeah, so vehicles that basically aren't meant to be driven on the road, essentially, is what it comes down to.
So, okay, so forklifts too. So what are they imposing on these quote off-road vehicles?
Well, they are in the middle of writing the regulation that they will propose to the board. So I don't have the specifics with me right now, but I am happy to get back to you or to put you in contact with these people that can give you all those details.
Yeah, I'm interested in it just because we have so much farming community around here, and they need these things to move because they're too heavy for folks to lift.
Right.
And it's so hot here. You can't have people walking through to check. I mean, they need things to check the drip lines and things. So
yep,
I would like to have input on that, because we have to think about the folks that are out in the fields and the heat and everything else they're exposed to.
Absolutely. If you want to, I will drop my email here in the chat, and if you want to email me and let me have your email, then I can put you in contact with all the right people.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Linda. Bianca, you have your hand raised. Please go ahead.
Yes, I do have a follow-up question for Michelle. For the blueprint, if we do decide to give public comment, would there be an open hearing, or is it just going to be a written document, comment that we have to do?
No, absolutely. Thank you for asking. No, there's actually going to be 3 different public workshops that are all happening in July. And all this information will come out in the email, just so you know. And let me, I don't know if I have the dates super handy, but I think it's here. Let me look real quick. Of course it's not, but the one date I do remember is the last one. I think it's the 7th. Hold on, I can double check on my own calendar. Yep, the 7th, which is a Friday, the 11th, which is a Tuesday, and then on the 18th, there is another one, which is also a Tuesday. And so these are going to be workshops where we're taking public comment from anybody, and they're open to everybody. And on the 18th the whole presentation will be primarily in Spanish, and we'll have translation online for people who need English. So that one might be a good one to attend for a lot of people. And we're always taking comments in any form. You know, if you ever wanted to just contact me personally, I will set up a meeting with you to talk to certain people to let them know anything you've got to say verbally. You can definitely put it in writing. There'll be a link that will come out that you can put it in writing. So in any way you want to get a hold of us and tell us whatever you think about the way the program should be changed or improved, or what you do like about it, all of that, we're open.
Thank you, Michelle. Bianca, was your question fully answered?
Yes, thank you. Can the Air District send the links for the workshops, please?
Yes, so like Michelle mentioned, and I'll just reiterate, we'll send all of these updates out in an email to you all, which will include, at least as we have it, the links to what Michelle has to share with us today. And then Michelle and all the other liaisons have been great. Once there's a link to a workshop or other announcements, we've been sending those out to you all as we get them. So we definitely promise to send anything along that CARB has for you all to participate in.
And I'll just let you know, I went ahead and dropped, since the pesticides labeling is coming up in 3 days, I went ahead and dropped the information for that there. And I just want to remind you that the blueprint, the district was already going to send it out, but we haven't gotten our Spanish translation finished yet. So we want to get that done before we send that out. So as soon as we have that, whether it gets out into this follow-up email or in a separate email, one way or another, as soon as we have it, we'll send it out.
And then I'll also let you all know, we did send an email about that pesticides labeling, but we will send a follow-up one. EPA did translate that announcement more recently, and so we'll send a follow-up one with the Spanish translation as well.
Thanks, everyone. Does anyone have any additional questions or comments before we continue on to action items? Okay, not seeing any raised hands or any additional comments. So I'll go ahead and continue. Also, would like to note that I was incorrect in saying that all CSCs are postponing their meetings in July. Arvin is still having their July meeting, but that does not change the fact that we will, Shaftero's next CSC meeting will still be on Monday, August 14th from 5 to 7 p.m. So we hope to see you all there. And now I am going to go ahead and pass the mic on to Jem, who's going to share her screen and read out the action items that we've taken down during today's meeting. As Jem, oh, sorry, Bianca, you have another question?
I'm so sorry, but why are we canceling the meeting in July? Is there a reason why, or there's no topic to speak?
Right. So thanks, Bianca. Great question. We did the same thing last year. It tends to be a time that we've seen folks take time off around the holiday. And to your point, we actually have several updates that we're expecting in August for some of those incentives programs we talked about at the meeting in person. But that doesn't mean we won't continue to send updates per Michelle and per others about all of the other ongoing work. And so we'll just have our next meeting in August. If you recall, we did the same thing last year, and I believe similarly around December, November, we kind of combined those meetings similarly due to the holidays.
Thanks, Jessica. Thanks, Bianca. Any additional questions or comments about the next CSC meeting? Okay, so thanks so much, everyone, for your engagement. So for the action items, as Jem shares those, please feel free to ask for clarification or to ask us for any updates on any of the items that we've noted to make sure that we've accurately documented these items. As a reminder to you all, we create action items in real time during each CSC meeting, and as a result, we may have missed a request or the overall meeting of the request. So if we've misinterpreted or missed your request, please let us know by raising your hand or commenting in the chat. Jem, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Vanessa. Good evening, everyone. I'll go through this really quickly. I do see we're close to time. So just gonna go through each action item that was mentioned today. And as Vanessa mentioned, if we need to correct anything, clarify anything, please feel free to raise your hand or drop it in the chat and we'll do it real time. The first action item is actually a few follow-up items for the Air District regarding the second round of the residential air filtration program. The follow-up questions pertaining to if residents who participated in the pilot program can also participate in this round. There was a question about folks who might want to use it for a second home or a second address. And then another request for physical flyers that folks can circulate and distribute to the community. Are there any questions or corrections for this action item? Okay.
Were we going to add in the urban greening that Jessica and I talked about, or no?
That might be in the second item. I think that got clustered with this action item. So there was a request for an update on the Shafter Boundary Community Tour. And I think in that same question was a question around vegetative barriers at the following meeting.
They keep getting intertwined and they're separate items. And I just want to make sure that we're keeping them separate. We have vegetative barriers as one, and we also have urban greening, which was the trees for the community for different parks and schools.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to make sure it's clear that those are two separate items because we need more information. Both were sent out for RFPs. And I believe urban greening for the trees went out twice. And we even had a subcommittee where I wouldn't erase the vegetative barriers because that's an important topic that we're working towards too, because we opened up funding for that. So I just want to make sure that they're both being looked at. Thank you very much.
Sure thing. Thank you, Linda. And I think I saw a hand raised. Michelle?
Yes, what is the Shafter Boundary Community Tour? What is that?
I can address that. So just a few residents wanted to show us some of the concerns that they've had. So we just, before the in-person meeting, went around and some of the places that they've been taking pictures for where they think vegetative barriers make sense, and just showed us in real life where some of those places were and kind of what they looked like, which just helped us characterize and understand better their concerns. So it was just an invitation that was, for us to kind of go out with them, and we just happened to use our time down in Shafter.
Okay, yeah, it's been brought up a couple times, but I never heard anybody ever say we're having a tour or anything.
Yeah,
so I
sorry,
really
we mentioned it. Yeah, we mentioned it at the in-person meeting, but I don't think that you were there, Michelle. So yeah, and it wasn't necessarily, maybe we can rephrase that. It wasn't like an official thing that was like noticed to the CSC or anything. Just a few residents asked that since we're going to be down there, if they can show us in person some of the concerns. And we definitely, and this goes to anyone, if anyone else has a similar request of us, we would love to come and meet you in person.
Thank you.
Sorry, I just want to make sure this wording is correct. Then how should we list that action item?
We just say update on the community resident meetup.
It was a visitation.
Sure.
Wasn't a tour. A visitation.
Well, whatever we want to call it, I do think that with like capitalizing it was making it a little sound more official than it was. So maybe that was part of it. Thank you, Michelle. Thanks, Jen.
The caps does have a different effect on it.
It does. There we go.
No caps. It's like yelling. We're not yelling. Okay, there we go. Thanks.
So I was just curious on this visitation. Are we going to have some type of map that talks about the places where you visited?
We're happy to note it on it was no different really than the map where the folks indicated their interest in vegetative barriers. So the map that's already exists. But we're happy we can follow up on that and show folks kind of in real time where we were.
Yeah, it's just nice that we're all working together and know what the needs are of the entire community. I know, some folks might live on one side of town and there's, others in other areas. So I just want to make sure we're all working together.
Yeah, noted. Thank you, Linda.
Awesome. Thank you for great questions and Jess for jumping in. In the last few action items, we have The Air District will distribute electronic and physical copies to those who requested it of the CalGEM slide deck. And the Air District will also provide an update about the annual report in August, a brief update about that. Linda, is that a new hand or an old hand? Oh, it's an old hand. Okay.
Sorry.
No, it's all good. Any questions or corrections for these action items? All right. And are there any action items we missed that should be added on here? Okay, if anything comes up in the meantime, you can contact us or the Air District and we'll be happy to update this accordingly. All right, back to you, Vane.
Thanks, Jem, for reading out those action items, and thank you all for engaging with those items. As always, we're very grateful for all that the CSC has shared during this meeting, all of your questions, reflections, comments. And at this time, we would like to open up the floor to everyone in attendance to make any comments about any of the content that you heard about today. Community member comments are really important to this process to ensure that this program is shaped with the community's perspective in mind. So if you have any questions, comments, additional reflections to share, please feel free to raise your hand, or if you would prefer to share them via the chat, you can post them in a comment. Angelica?
So básicamente están haciendo como unos anuncios en el tele ya por el menos el de las noticias locales aquí que están haciendo de distribución de los filtros de aire. No sé, purificador, eso. Y estamos queriendo saber cuáles son los gentes que se pueden cualificar de eso, esos nomás específicamente de gente que están involucrados en el proyecto ahorita como del AVE o también es disponible para el resto del condado y quienes que pueden cualificar.
I can answer that question. Angelica, I went over in the beginning, I'm not sure if you were on in detail, the Clean Air Rooms program. Given the sake of time, what I'm going to do is I will call you and follow up. I'll just make one quick announcement here that everyone that is in the Shafter AB617 boundary, which includes that big boundary, the 7-mile radius, is eligible for a clean air filtration device. We have a website. I'm going to see if someone from my team, Rocio, if you can drop in the Clean Air Rooms link so that folks can, maybe Angelica can click on it. Separately, we had a valley-wide program that other folks in certain pockets of Kern County and other places in disadvantaged communities across the valley were eligible for. But that has that's different than your program that is very focused on the Shafter community and has a lot of funds. And we're hoping that almost every household in Shafter, given the amount of money we have, should be eligible. We've already given away over 160 in Shafter. We have over 4,800 left in Shafter. We have a lot. So please let folks know. And Angelica, we're happy to, maybe I'll give you a call tomorrow. If you know other people that you want to help sign up, we'll give you a call tomorrow and see if there's a way we can assist you or your neighbors.
Ok, porque miré eso el otro noche en la noticia y estaban, pues es por ese del Telemundo para acá, so no sé que si eso se fuera incluyendo gente como de Bakersfield o de esas áreas para allá, o que si eso es diferente en comparación de qué está haciendo aquí. Para eso estaba queriendo saber.
Great question. And I'll just iterate, it is the same program. You all just have a concentrated amount of way more funding because you have this AB617 CERT funding. But it's essentially the same, which is why the website's the same. We just on the back end, once we see the addresses know which community that the funding is coming from. And so yes, please, hopefully folks saw, we sent out an announcement before it opened, then we sent out an announcement when it opened because we wanted you all to know first. But that was before we did any of the news. It was about 3 or 4 days before the news found out about it. But you all have tons of funding. So please, please, please tell your neighbors. And we're going to kind of follow up on all the outreach advice we've been given by you all. So thank you.
Okay, muchas gracias.
Thank you, Angelica, for your question, and thanks, Jessica, for the follow-up. And Marisela has also posted a couple of helpful links in the chat on how to apply to the program online, as well as for more information. And for folks that who don't have access to internet, you can also call the number that is included in the comments. So thanks very much, Marisela, for including that. Any additional questions or comments that folks would like to share before we wrap up tonight's meeting? Cesar?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you for the presentation and all the information.
I think he just said thank you for all the information.
Thank you, Cesar. Anyone else? Any questions, comments, reflections? Dr. Ramos, while we're waiting, are there any comments on YouTube Live?
Good question. At this time, we don't have any additional questions.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any raised hands, and I'm not seeing any new comments in the chat. So I am going to go ahead and wrap up tonight's meeting. On behalf of the Hard-Earned Company team, I would like to thank everyone here today for your participation and your continued commitment to AB617. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass it on to Jessica for closing remarks.
Thank you all. I just want to extend the thank you not only to Courtney and your team for the great presentation and all of just the great support that I think that CalGEM has really stepped up and shown these communities that have all of these concerns. And we know that the conversation's not over, so we just welcome you fully to the CSC family and just appreciate all of the feedback. I also want to thank the CSC members who really helped drive putting this on the agenda. We definitely agree that it was very important. So thank you all very much. And then finally, I'll just say that I will see most of you sometime, maybe in November, December. I start my maternity leave in a few weeks. So I was so grateful to see many of you in person before I go away, because I couldn't imagine not seeing you all for like years that it's been. So thank you all for all of the great work this year so far. I so look forward to checking in with my team and then certainly coming back and seeing all the progress you guys will have made. And I can't wait to share pictures and maybe bring like a baby on the screen if you'll let me. So I just appreciate you all very much and hope that you all have a great evening.
Thank you. I hope it's a wonderful birth.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good rest of